According to information sourced from The Punch, the annual housing allowances for the newly appointed ministers could potentially tally up to 343.25 million naira for the country. Extrapolating this annual allocation over a span of 4 years, the federal government's expenditure on accommodation for the 45 ministers-designate would amount to 1.37 billion naira. These allowances are computed based on data extracted from a document accessible on the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission's website. The breakdown encompasses provisions for accommodation, set at 200% of the basic salary, domestic staff, equivalent to 75% of the basic salary, utilities, accounting for 30% of the basic salary, and furniture, calibrated at 300% of the basic salary. It's worth noting that unlike other monthly allowances, the furniture allowance is typically disbursed once every 4 years. Recently, President Bola Tinubu unveiled the roles assigned to his designated ministers. Upon reviewing the list furnished to our correspondent in Abuja, it came to light that the names of notable individuals such as Nasir El-Rufai, a former governor of Kaduna State, Stella Okatit, a former national women leader of the All Progressives Congress, and Danladi Abubakar, a ministerial nominee from Taraba State, were notably absent. Earlier, the Senate had withheld the confirmation of the three owing to security checks. In the list obtained by our correspondent, it was observed that 13 of the nominees were appointed ministers of state while some new ministries were also created. The ministers and their designations are as follows: Minister of Communications, Innovation, and Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani, Minister of State, Environment and Ecological Management, Ishaq Salako, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. Wailaduan, Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, Bunmi Tunji Ojo, Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, Minister of State, Health and Social Welfare, Tunji Alausa, Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Deli Alake, Minister of Tourism, Lola Adejan, Minister of Transportation, Adigboyiga Oyetola. Others are Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Doris Enite, Minister of Innovation Science and Technology, Uche Naji, Minister of State, Labor and Employment, Karuka Onyejiaka, Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Kennedy, Minister of Works, David Umahi, Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, Minister of Youth, Abubakar Momo, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu, Minister of State, Gas Resources, Ekperk Bekpo, Minister of State, Petroleum Resources, Heineken Lokbabiri, Minister of Sports Development, John Eno, and Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. Also on the list are the Minister of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy, Hannatu Musawa, Minister of Defense, Muhammad Badaru, Minister of State Defense, Bello Matawal, Minister of State, Education, Tanko Sanunu, Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Ahmed Danjawa. Tinubu set the record for the highest number of ministerial nominees in Nigeria's Fourth Republic, 1999 to date, with 48, which experts said would likely worsen the high governance costs. The president's nominees topped the 42 appointed by his predecessor, Muhammadu Buhari, in 2019 by 5 more persons. Tinubu first nominated 28 persons to be cleared by the Senate as ministers. The president also sent another list of 19 nominees, making a total of 47 potential cabinet members. However, Tinubu withdrew the nomination of Mariam Shetty as a ministerial nominee from Kano State and replaced her with Dr. Maria Mahmood Bunkyer, also from Kano State. He also added the name of Festus Keyamo, a senior advocate of Nigeria from Delta State, as a nominee for screening. In his first term, Buhari named 36 ministers, while the number increased to 42 during his second term. Former President Goodluck Jonathan in 2011 named 33 nominees to be ministers in his cabinet, including 9 from the Umar Yar'Adua administration. In 2007, Yar'Adua named a 39-member cabinet made up of 32 men and 7 women. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo initially named 42 ministers in 1999 but reviewed his cabinet to reduce the number of ministries and ministers to 27 and 40, respectively, before he left office in 2007. Despite calls to reduce the cost of governance, Tinubu has now surpassed Obasanjo, Yar'Adua, Jonathan, and Buhari to nominate 48 would-be ministers, setting a new record since the country returned to democracy 24 years ago. However, with the 3 yet to be approved, the total number of ministers has dropped to 45, which still exceeds previous administrations. Sunday Punch learned that each minister is entitled to an accommodation allowance of 4.05 million naira, domestic staff allowance of 1.52 million naira, and utility allowance of 0.61 million naira, alongside furniture allowance of N6.08 m, which is paid once in 4 years. Each Minister of State is entitled to an accommodation allowance of 3.92 million naira, domestic staff allowance of 1.47 million naira, and utility allowance of 0.59 million naira, alongside furniture allowance of 5.87 million naira, which is paid once in 4 years. An analysis of the figures showed that each minister is expected to get annually a total of 7.7 million naira, while each Minister of State is expected to get a total of 7.45 million naira annually. In 4 years, each minister gets 30.8 million naira, while each Minister of State gets 29.8 million naira. In total, the 32 ministers are anticipated to result in an expenditure of approximately 985.6 million naira for the nation, while the 13 ministers of state are projected to consume roughly 387.4 million naira over a span of 4 years. Consequently, when combining the costs associated with all 45 ministers, the cumulative amount accrued would reach 1.37 billion naira within a 4-year timeframe. It should be noted that this financial outlay is likely to witness an increase following the approval of the 3 pending ministerial nominees. This development has prompted discussions advocating for a reduction in the overall expenditure related to governance. A respected economist, Professor Akpakpanadet, has previously expressed the viewpoint that the augmentation in the count of ministers was unwarranted and would only exacerbate the financial burden associated with governance. An economist, Professor Akpakpanadet, earlier stated that the increase in the number of ministers was unnecessary and would escalate the cost of governance. He said, "What they have done is dangerous. For a long time, we have been complaining about the cost of governance. We looked at the number of institutions that they had and then said the government should reduce them. And they did, but there were so many overlaps. To now talk of 48 ministers doesn't make sense. The implication is that they will further increase the cost of governance. At this level of our democracy, we don't need this number of ministers. You can merge the ministries and still get the functions delivered. We need a leaner, but very effective, government." An economist, Deborah Oluwagbenga, also said that Nigeria was not in a financial state to employ the services of many ministers. She stated, "Let's not forget that this country is in huge debt and the best way to go is to reduce the cost of governance. If the president is appointing this huge number of aides, he's already laying a foundation for governors to do the same. This is not developmental and can crush the economy of the country. What we should be looking at this time is to ensure that we reduce our expenses and try to make good use of what we have in areas that need adjustments. We cannot continue like this.